Welcome back to News and Views on Salam Media. I'm your host, Salalo Makwidire, and we have a very special guest joining us to shed light on the topic of national importance as we edge closer to a very significant moment in our nation's history with the general election set for May 29th. Marking 30 years of democracy. I hope that you have registered to vote as the nation is buzzing with anticipation and preparation. And coming, joining us on Salam Media to navigate this through intricacies of the upcoming democratic exercise. We are honored to have with us Kate Babela. She's the spokesperson and head of communications for the Independent Electoral Commission, the IEC for short, the people who are responsible for making sure that our democracy is lively and you and I have free and fair elections. Kate, thank you for joining us on Salam Media and welcome.
Thank you so much, and good morning to you, Silailo, and the rest of the Salam Media listeners.
Yeah. Just quickly, can you give us an overview of the IEC's preparations for the upcoming general elections that are scheduled for 29th May? Where are you guys? Is everything in order? And all that's left is South Africans who must just go out on the date and cast their ballots.
Indeed, we certainly are ready. As you may recall, that last week Friday, the president proclaimed the election date. That means that the 29th of May was published in the Government Gazette as a election day. That day, midnight, the voters roll closed. If you are a keen watcher of our communication artillery, by 1 minute after 12, all our systems had closed down, just so that voters do not get confused about whether the registration is still on or not. So that part is gone. What it meant is that as soon as 12 midnight hits the dial, then the chief electoral officer immediately and urgently assembled all political parties that are represented in parliament for them to discuss what is called the election timetable. The election timetable is a legal document that will govern all our election processes right up to the 29th of May. So therefore, as we speak, me and you this morning, the election timetable is live, and we're already on the first steps of it. On Monday, the voters roll. Actually, on Friday, because when the timetable was proclaimed, it was published on Saturday. So immediately, the section that deals with the voters roll was provisionally available for inspection, but equally so, the candidate nomination opened. What it means is that any political party, any independent candidates that will contest these elections, an opportunity has been opened for them, an online platform to register their various candidates for the election. So the election timetable, Silailo, is our living document, is our Bible, is our everything from now right up to the 29th of May. It's a legal document. That means that me and you, if we fall asleep and the deadline passes us, you cannot come to the IEC and say the IEC is unfair, they like Silailo more than Kate, they like Kate more than Silailo. That does not work. You have to take us to court for any decision to be turned over. So where we are currently, we are running speed ahead in terms of election preparation, anticipating a very successful election on the 29th of May, which is a public holiday, by the way, that is already published in the Government Gazette. So that means it's legal. Our work is completely driven by legal processes. Nothing we do for fun, nothing we do for favors, nothing we do for process sake. We do it extremely by the book.
I think with every election, if there's one question that always comes up, especially in South Africa, is the issue of voter education. Leading up to the 2024 elections, what has the IEC done differently to make sure that there's enough voter awareness and voter education in our communities? And is there any signs that when you look at the amount of people that have registered to vote, that there's that awareness and willing to participate in a very important democratical process?
When you look at the past two voter registrations, including the online initiatives that we've been running, what it suggests to us is that we've had quite a keen interest from young people on the combined activities around our voter registration was sitting at almost 5 million. The first one, we're sitting with 2.8 million people that went into our voting stations, either registering as new voters, either changing their addresses, or any other activities that they needed to interact with the IEC about. And then on the second one, we had more than 2 million as well coming through our voting stations. And online, we had more than 400,000 interactions with our online voter registration portal. So it has been a very, very successful registration process. But also what we realized with these elections is that we're picking up young people who are coming through the door. We're sitting at about 48% of young people under the age of 39 who are on the voters roll as we speak. So what it means is that we're almost at the level of 50% of young people interacting with the Electoral Commission. So that has been a very great success. The question of vote education, we began the process, Lalo, to intensify civic and democracy education, which is our daily bread, by the way. We do that as part of our day-to-day work at the Electoral Commission. But for this election, to intensify it, we had more than 3,000 officials on the ground interacting with voters individually, interacting with them in groups, interacting with them through NGOs, through institutions, through private sector. We've even had private sector companies calling the Electoral Commission for us to come and do registrations on their own grounds, or even civic and voter education. But one of the big initiatives we have on an ongoing basis is what we call Schools Democracy Week, which happens around your April period. We'll continue to do that as well this year. And also we've got tertiary institution program. We do that on an annual basis. And so we've got quite a basket of processes, or a basket of activities that we undertake with the various partnerships. Because as you may recall, that the Electoral Commission as an entity is not a big Chapter 9 institution, but with our massive network. For instance, when we go into schools, we've got a formal MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with the Department of Basic Education. The same when we go into tertiary institutions, we've got a similar MOU with the Department of Higher Education. So we've got quite a cluster of MOUs that assist us to go into business. For instance, every now and then, the Chief Electoral Officer addresses business in terms of supporting us in our various initiatives. You will see when the Results Operations Center comes into effect. I'm hoping that you'll be joining me. You're going to work from that studio.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
you better
Yes.
join me this time around. I'm going to give you a
Yeah,
studio.
definitely.
I'm not going to play monkey tricks on me. So you'll see when we come to the Results Operations Center, which is where we receive all the results of the whole country from every voting station. There are people that will be assisting us to build the facility. Private sector will support in terms of sponsorship. That means they reduce the financial burden on the Electoral Commission. So in that way, we're able to do massive work without any disruption. So a lot of work has been done on the ground, and we're quite comfortable as the Electoral Commission that work has been exceptionally done, massive partnerships, people like yourself. I know with every effort of our work, especially where we maximize our work, you never drop us. And thank you for this support. You drag us out of wherever we are to come and talk and to update listeners. And so I'm very privileged to have this relationship with you. You never drop us. So thank you very, very much for the support as well.
Mm. You touched a bit on, the numbers. Looking at them, what kind of picture do they play? I mean, paint. I mean, the IEC reported a substantial number of registered voters. If you can maybe, paint a picture for us, and what do they indicate about voter engagement this year?
What they indicate is that definitely we've had an increase in from 39 years downwards in terms of our voters' roll. It's always an area that gives us grief, because young people are very busy. Your troop is very busy. I'm not sure
Yeah.
what they do, but they're very busy. I promise you'll think they run conglomerates. That's how busy they are. So the online facility was a game changer, because they don't have to come to us. They don't have to see us. They just go online, register themselves, and then they're done and dusted. I think it's one of the major initiatives that has assisted us to add more voters on the voters roll. So definitely the 39-year downwards groupie is increasing very dramatically. We're happy about that. We want to dip the 50% scale, then we'll be knowing that we're on our way to a very brilliant trajectory. And then the other important thing is women remain the biggest the voters, as we may recall, in terms of our demographic as a country. they remain the leading group in terms of the voters roll. Men are slowly coming in through the books. So from where we are, where we're sitting as the electoral management body, we are positive that the number of voters has increased. What it means is that you know that when the voters roll increases, you've got a potential of having a higher voter turnout. Because if most of those people show up and vote, then you've got a very live democracy. But equally so, we're very mindful of the challenges that comes with election day, which is your protests and all sorts of other things. So as we plan for a higher voter turnout, we're very conscious of the fact that we could be experiencing difficulties that might not be on our plan, or are on our plan that are completely out of our bounds. Because when people shut down voting stations, it becomes extremely unfortunate. We have to move our staff, especially just to make sure they're safe. So we're hoping that as we go into these elections, we've got NGOs on the ground, we've got civil society, we've got political parties engaging their supporters, so that our country is able to continue maintaining electoral democracy in a way that we're able to have a very safe environment. Because remember, Selailo, if our country is not politically stable, I'm not sure how do we even operate. Me and you will not even be able to talk like this, because there'll be all sorts of embargoes and all other funny things that is pertinent of very unstable political landscapes. So where we are, the voters' roll, we're looking very healthy, and then we're looking forward to a very brilliant voter turnout for these particular elections.
No, definitely. And just maybe to touch on this, traditionally, the IEC has relied on, unemployed individuals to serve as registration officers. However, in a departure from this practice, the commission has opted to employ civil servants for the role in the upcoming elections. And this is a shift that has obviously raised a lot of eyebrows, particularly with political parties, criticizing and questioning the commission's rationale and the potential implications for the electoral process. Can you touch a bit on that? And if indeed, the employment of a civil servant as a voter registration officers does or will have any kind of impact on the implications of the electoral process?
No, we've moved completely away from making a rule that says we'll employ civil servants. If you may recall, when you go online and looking for a job in the Electoral Commission, we've got a online recruitment. That means anyone that qualifies for that job and has got the basic experience to navigate it is able to is able to go through, is able to be employed. So the issue of civil servants does not even exist, because we're avoiding to get into a situation where we'll be blamed for not being impartial, or doing all sorts of things that cannot be proven by anybody. So what we've done, for instance, during the registration season, we had more than 50,000 unemployed people employed through that period of voter registration by the Electoral Commission. So we've completely moved away, Silalo, from what someone can regard as a employing a civil servants, but also are partnering with professional bodies where we need a particular specific skill. So at the moment, definitely no civil servants. We only employ people that meet a certain criteria. Where we have to use any type of skill, we'll use it for a specific reason. When we get closer to voting, remind me, let's just break down a little bit the voting station staff, because per voting station, you're looking at about 9 people, starting with a queue worker. The queue worker is the fellow that meets you outside and says, Lilo, let's have a look. They've got a gadget that they'll utilize, and they'll run through your ID. You have to barcode it to check. And then if you're at the wrong voting station, before you even get inside, they'll be able to tell you, no, you're at the wrong voting station. This is where the area where you are supposed to vote is that other end. Because what we're avoiding also is that, I think, which is a very important element, is that our in terms of our legislation currently, you vote where you are registered. You don't wake up in the morning and say, I feel like voting somewhere else. I want to change voting stations, or I feel like, it's not working for these elections. A lot of people are going to be very disappointed if they move away from the voting station, and if they've not requested a special privilege from the chief electoral officer through what you call special voting that will be opening. people like me and you must apply for special voting because on Wednesday the 29th, Selalo will be working. So we better get, because special vote means Monday, Tuesday, we can vote. Then Wednesday, we're able to wake up early in the morning to advise South Africans that voting stations are closed, are opened from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. They must not forget the identity document. They must not bring their driver's license. They're not valid. So the issue of, I think is what, I'm glad that you raised these questions, Lalo. One of the things that we'll do, we're definitely going to ensure that we send out a messaging to South Africans as often as possible to say, we are definitely not in the business of hiring civil servants. Other nations, advanced nations globally, they're doing that, by the way, as a part of their own processing of their electoral democracy. In South Africa, we do not do that. We look at disability sector, we look at various other sectors, we look at unemployed people. So we cut across sectors to ensure that when people come into voting station, it's a cluster of people, but very well trained and skilled for the work that they're doing. We don't want people to come into the voting station and doubt that whether the presiding officer knows what they're doing. Presiding officer is like the chief executive in an election. They know everything. They hire, they fire, they're the rule. Even I must comply by the rules of the presiding officer. So therefore, we do not take chances with the electoral staff, but also we are very fair in applying the process of employment.
The issue of safety in and around, voting stations has been another, challenge that I feel like the IEC has to deal with over the years. This year's elections, have there been engagements with law enforcement agencies, political parties themselves to make sure that, voting stations are not areas of contention where, violence sparks up and ultimately, scaring people from going out and exercising their right to vote?
That is part and parcel of our planning. As soon as the election season begins, immediately the security cluster comes into effect. That means that every voting station, without a doubt, will have a security feature. One of the things that we do quite efficiently, when before the voting station staff set up the voting station, you've got the sniffer dogs that goes around the voting station to make sure that there's nothing that will disrupt the peace or that will create an environment that is unconducive to our officials. So that is a firm process of our work. We do it with every election, with every by-election, to make sure that really when everything has been said and done, voters and both our electoral staff must not be in an unsafe environment. So that will feature very prominently, and we're happy about the plans we have with the security cluster of our country.
And just to get it into the ballot paper itself, this year's election introduces three very distinct ballot papers. Could
Yeah.
you maybe elaborate on some of the changes that you've made to the voting system and how this year's voting process and elections will differ from the previous ones?
As you may recall, one of the key features of our legislation for this election is the entry of independent candidates. That means independent candidates have an opportunity to be in parliament. Out of the 400 seats that were allocated to political parties in parliament, 200 of those have been set aside for independent candidates. So therefore, we're sitting with 3 ballot papers for these elections. As soon as the candidate, we close the voters roll and we certify it. That's a very key word. Once it's certified, then we'll share with South Africans how the ballot paper is going to look like. We'll make it prominent because for the first time, Law will be going into voting stations with 3 ballot papers, one for national parliament, one for province, and then one for region. Region, that means that independent candidates, remember, independent candidates are not like political parties. They'll be serving in their localities. So therefore, that allows South Africans to choose independent candidates of their choice. So as you walk into a voting station, we will be sitting with 3 ballot papers, unless otherwise, if you are not voting in your usual voting station, or you're outside of the boundaries of your voting station, only then would you lose 1 ballot paper because you're not in your normal area of residence. But basically, on a broad basis, we're looking at 3 ballot papers for these elections.
And just lastly, before I let you go there, Kate, looking back at 30 years of democracy, how does the IEC view the evolution of the electoral process in South Africa, and what are some of the lessons that have been learned and that are being applied to this year's elections?
For us, it has been quite an interesting landscape. We moved from a manual-based type of system where most of the processes were done manually, and you had to go to our offices to register as a voter, for instance, or you had to wait for a voter registration weekend. We're not even dreaming about that anymore, Silalo. It's so amazing to have to wake up in the morning and you find that 10,000 people have come into the voters roll whilst you are busy with other things. So the shift into online voter registration system for our for incoming voters or new voters in the country, that has been a great initiative, and we're exceptionally proud about it. As a our country is a young nation. We've got a huge bulge of young people, youth bulge that we have to manage. So that has been a great one for us. But equally so, our ability to ensure that voters don't walk your 10 kilometers to get to a voting station. The improvement of our voting infrastructure is another huge one, because in every locality, if it means we set up a tent on the corner where there are no facilities, there's nothing, it's a new area developing, we're happy to do that comfortably so, because we do not want voters in this country to be walking miles and miles to get to the voting station. For us, that has been a critical one. And also the other third element that we're also looking at very closely is how the electoral process is able to live financially. It's not big money. That's why we don't even call them salaries. We call them stipends, because you are coming in for that day's level just to assist us to manage the voting process, and our ability to can be able to pull in younger South Africans and people who are unemployed. It's a huge take for us. If in a voter registration weekend we're able to employ 50,000 people, there's a lot of people who are able to get bread for that weekend, and we appreciate that about our ability as an entity to can be able to do such processes. So, on a nutshell, we have really moved from a manual system into a system that is slowly and surely moving into an online or a digital element of our work. And then we believe that in time, also, you look at our processes of civic and voter education, most of our platforms are online. We're doing a lot of online engagements. Even now, you'll see when I host press briefings, they're all hybrid, they're virtual. Wherever you are in your media house, you're able to just to follow the proceedings, even ask questions with no effort. And those are the things that we want to mainstream as an organization, so that we get to a point where we know that you do not have to struggle to reach the IEC. On a dial, we're available for you.
No, I think we're going to leave it there. Kate, thank you so much for giving us your time and painting that picture for us. I'm pretty sure we'll be seeing you at the ROC, and you'll
Oh,
be able to answer.
definitely.
You'll be able to answer
We need to get
more of
up
our
on
questions
rainbows.
there.
We need our rainbows in daughter. Yo, thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you
you so
so
much.
much.
Thank you so much,
I
and
appreciate it.
appreciate your time. There you
Thank you very
go.
much.
Kate
Okay,
Babella
bye-bye.
there, the IEC spokesperson, just painting a picture for us about just how ready the IEC is for the 2024 general elections that are taking place on May the 29th. These are the general elections. I'm pretty sure that all of you are registered to vote. This is 30 years of our democracy, a very, very, very important, exercise that you, as a South African, you need to follow. You need to follow at a very critical point in our democracy. 30 years later, where we have to reflect and look at how we can work at further fixing the country that we call home. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I will be chatting to founder of Will's Life Changer, Ronel Mazzinini. He's living with a disability, but he's embracing challenges, celebrating resilience, and redefining abilities. More on this after the break.